Hello and welcome to another action-packed, exciting hour of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Rewatch Along Project. This is podcasting the way it used to be and the way you like it. This show is a production of the Something Else Podcast Network, and it is episode number 063 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling from April 10th, 1993, theoretically taped March 22nd, 1993, at the Hasty High School Gym in Hasty, Virginia. It's also technically from the Bluegrass Brawl in Kentucky, in the town whose name escapes me at the moment. But anyway, my name is Pikeville, Kentucky. And joining me here, my name is Arya. Joining me as always is the Oscar Leroy to my Brent Leroy. It's Trey.
Jackass.
Hammerhead.
I love corner gas.
It's a great show, and
it is.
I just want to point out we've now talked about corner gas twice this week.
Yeah.
And those fireworks here in the background are purely because people are excited for this podcast program, and it has nothing to do with this show being taped on the 4th of July.
It's nice to be celebrated.
Yes. And in case you're wondering why, if it's the 4th of July, I'm not sitting outside watching fireworks, it's because I'm 39 years old and I've seen enough fireworks in my life.
Yeah.
Yes, I am that level of a buzzkill. So, anyway.
I would look at fireworks if I was somewhere in proximity to a cool fireworks show, but I don't care enough to go to a cool fireworks show unless just one happens to break out in my vicinity. And the assholes shooting off bottle rockets in my neighborhood don't constitute a cool fireworks show.
I literally have my back to the window where they're setting them off at. So that is my contribution to watching the fireworks show. So anyway, in case it's the first time you've ever checked out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Along Project, what we do, it is really quite simple here, people. We watch every single episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, beginning with episode number 1 on February 1st, 1992. We go all the way live until episode number 200 on November 26th, 1995. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the so-so, the okay, the tremendous, the out of this world, the okay, the awful, the terrible, the horrible. Thankfully, there's not a whole lot of those. We talk about some matches. We watch some angles. We listen to some promos. And ultimately, we have some fun for about an hour, jumping into the Wayback Machine and talking about some old school wrestling. And then at the end of the show, I also tell you about what else is happening in the world of wrestling, because I can tell you April 10th, 1993 until I'm blue in the face. But, but it helps to tell you because then you have something to say, oh, okay, that also happened? Hey, I remember that. And it gives you some context here. That's what we're all about here on this show. It's context.
Context is very important.
Yes. So let's go to our extended intro of this week's show. We're going to start with Bob Caudle and Dutch Mantell in Hasty, and they're going to pitch it to the intro from, the Bluegrass Brawl, including somebody who I would have bet you $1,000 never appeared on this show, and I'd be out $1,000. So let's go to Bob Caudle.
Lance Russell?
Yes. Spoiler, Lance Russell's. You're going to hear his voice in about a minute. But let's go to that right now.
Welcome to another exciting action-packed hour of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Wrestling the way it used to be, fans, and the way you like it. Hi there, I'm Bob Caudle along with Dutch Mantell, and welcome to a very special edition of Smoky Mountain Wrestling this week. Dutch, we got a big main event for all our fans this week.
Absolutely. A big Beat the Champ TV match between, and I'm looking forward to this.
What
this
was
is
that?
The greatest.
What'd you have?
What?
What was that?
Nothing you'd be interested in, Bob. A great Beat the Champ match between two supposedly good friends, Bobby Eaton and Tom Pritchard, right here today. I would pay them to be here, but I'm here.
Also, fans, we're going to have a word from Bob Armstrong about the result of his investigation into the Heavenly Bodies Incorporated. The rest of our program today will come to you from on location from the Bluegrass Brawl in Pikeville, Kentucky. So right now, let's go to our colleagues, Les Thatcher and Lance Russell in Pikeville.
Hard time
And with the playing of that song, we're ready to kick open the doors on the Bluegrass Brawl. We're here in Pikeville, Kentucky, the Pikeville College Gym. I'm Les Thatcher, and along with me tonight, a good friend and one of the legendary voices of professional wrestling, Mr. Lance Russell.
Les, thank you very much, and I appreciate it. I ran into some of our friends from the past. I got to tell you, it's been a while, but Les called me up there a few weeks back and said they got some action going in Pikeville, Kentucky at the Bluegrass Ball. You will not believe. And he started telling me some of the names on the card. I couldn't pass it up. He gave me the kind invitation to come up and join him here. And I got to tell you, Les, I really appreciate it, and I'm ready for all the action.
All right, Lance, good to have you here. We have got 3 main events on the Brawl card tonight. Main event number 1 will be a Russian roulette death match. Kevin Sullivan takes on Primetime Brian Lee.
And you know, that is the kind of match that we're going to be talking about, the options that come out of that Russian roulette. Kevin Sullivan, diabolical. Those 2 words go together. Brian Lee and guts. And brother, that's going to be something when Primetime gets going.
It should be a barn burner. Main event number 2, for the first time in 15 years, a Tennessee chain match. The Smoky Mountain title at stake as Tracy Smothers tangles with a dirty white boy.
Tracy has not had the experience that, of course, the mentor of the dirty white boy, Ron Wright, has, and that is going to be something against it. But did you ever see him back up when they said chain match? Not a step. Right in there, and let's get it on.
Absolutely. And main event number 3, a great Smoky Mountain showdown, 3 three-man teams. The Stud Stable, the Heavenly Bodies, the Rock and Roll Express with Arn Anderson, all 3 in the ring at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. It's going to have all 9 guys. Anything goes, and that's exactly what that was the clincher. I had to be here to see that match.
Well, Lance is here. I'm here. We're glad you're with us. And without further ado, let's get on with it. Lance?
Okay.
Yes, let's take a cue from Les and Lance, and let's get on with it. But yeah, if you would have bet me $1,000 that Lance Russell appeared on this show, I would be out $1,000. Because
I didn't know, but I wasn't surprised.
I mean, I guess I'm not really that surprised, but you know, still, it's like I wasn't expecting it.
By the way, listener, if you didn't know, Lance Russell, very famous as the iconic voice of Memphis wrestling for many years.
And if you're somehow listening to this show and not knowing who Lance Russell is, thank you for listening? Question mark?
You think for some reason there's like one person out there, they don't even like wrestling, but for some reason they found us on YouTube and we're like a comfort to them?
That might be my girlfriend, who still to this day has not told me what she thought about the show when she told me weeks ago that she was listening.
The
good news is we're still dating, so I guess there's something.
Well, there you go. It can't be that bad.
Yeah. So I did note during the intro just how difficult it was to say Bluegrass Brawl. Because I could be wrong.
Bluegrass Brawl.
Yeah. I don't think anybody said it right.
Bluegrass Brawl.
Yes, the Bluegrass Brawl.
Is it just because I'm Southern?
Yes. Now,
interesting.
You watched the Bluegrass Brawl. Was all this a part of it? Was this intro with Les and Lance in there?
Yeah.
Did they also have the undercard matches?
There is the first match was Robbie Eagle, not to be confused with Robbie Eagles, who was a much better wrestler. Robbie Eagles against Rip Rogers. That was not on the card, but everything else. It was the matches that we saw plus the Mongolian Stomper against Rob Morgan. It was 1 minute 22 seconds, and Rob Morgan was Stomper's driver. Probably got paid $25 for doing the match or whatever.
if that.
If that.
And then Tim Horner versus the Night Stalker.
Yeah. Why you got to remind me?
By the way, Robbie Eagle, who again, not to confuse with Robbie Eagles, is
The
better known
Maestro.
as is the Maestro, WCW.
Yeah.
And also the person that Randy Savage bought the Gorgeous George name from to give to his stripper girlfriend.
Yes.
And that's
Also, the trainer of my good friend Surly Cecil Scott.
shout out to Surly Cecil Scott. I'm
Yeah,
so
I
I'm
doubt he
so
listens.
I'm so putting that in the description of this week's show.
There you go. I'll tag him on Twitter. Maybe you'll see it.
And he's Surly Cecil Scott, not Shirley Cecil Scott.
Don't call him Shirley.
He probably won't like that if he's surly.
No.
So we came back from commercial, and Les and Lance pitch it to Primetime Brian Lee, rolling the dice for the Russian roulette match. And it comes up 6. So it's any match Primetime Brian Lee wants. And I got to say, I call shenanigans because they did not zoom in on that dice. So we just got to take their word for it that it came up 6.
I call shenanigans because he didn't choose fire.
Well, I mean, if this was a shoot, would you want to have a fire match? Actually, oh my God. The fire match, the ring surrounded by fire, and Night Stalker and Tim Horner are still handcuffed to the ring posts.
Yes. And also, instead of Les Thatcher and Lance Russell, it's Beavis and Butthead doing commentary.
Tim Horner is not doing commentary until later. Oh, you meant the actual Beavis and Butthead.
Oh, man. I never really thought of it, but Tim Horner is a Beavis-looking motherfucker, ain't he?
Yes, he is. Oh, Lord. So anyway, as we spoiled for you a few weeks ago, Primetime Brian Lee wants the exact same match as the one he had in Knoxville, which was the Singapore Spike match. And so we joined the match already in progress. As we mentioned, Night Stalker and Horner are handcuffed to the post. And honestly, you could have just assumed that Horner was there because Horner didn't really do anything, at least what they showed here on TV. The match only went 7 minutes, but they edited around it. They basically edited it to the end where all 4 boxes were open, but somehow the spike was never found. And maybe it came out better if you would have watched the show like Trey did. But, Night Stalker just had the spike. And they had a little bit of a confusing end here where it looked like he was trying to give the spike, but then he decided not to. And Brian Lee rolled up Kevin Sullivan and got the win.
Yeah, this wasn't good. The finish was confusing. It felt like very sudden, anticlimactic, but the people popped so loud I couldn't hear the bell, so what do I know? I noted in my original notes for the Bluegrass Brawl, there's no way this was definitely not a conclusive finish for the Kevin Sullivan Brian Lee feud, but apparently it is. Apparently that was the blow off.
I was gonna say, I think this is it. And
what a fucking terrible blow off.
I mean, the feud's been going on since August, so it makes sense that they'd finally blow it off here. But this is a terrible blow off.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's not time to blow it off. I'm saying it was a fucking shitty blow off.
Oh, indeed. And let me see here, because let's see. That's 94. I was about to say, what the hell's going on? But that's April of 94. April of 93, and I'm still he is not doing anything of note for a while here. Because this is, he has a couple more matches with Kevin Sullivan, but by and large, this is it. He's going to wrestle a lot of house show matches with Killer Kyle, including one in Hazard, Kentucky that Killer Kyle wins, believe it or not, which does not seem right. But
wow.
Anywho, so after the match, I I wonder if they legitimately had issues trying to unhandcuff Night Stalker. Although I guess it made sense for it to be a worked thing because they could not unhandcuff Night Stalker. And so during the big climax where him and Sullivan are facing off, Night Stalker is still handcuffed to the ring post, and they have to undo the turnbuckle for him to get loose. And Sullivan hits Night Stalker with a chair that he basically blows off. And eventually Night Stalker gets loose and Sullivan runs off.
Yeah, that's Night Stalker turned babyface.
Yep. Now, did they air any of the promos or anything on the Bluegrass Brawl?
Most of them, but not the Night Stalker promo for some reason.
Well, the world's not going to end if you didn't hear it, but you're going to hear it anyway. So let's go to the Night Stalker.
Kevin Sullivan, you used to be my master, but that is no more. See, you promised me the streets of gold, Kevin Sullivan. None of it came true. What happened? I was there for the feeding frenzies, the bloodbaths, anything you needed to be done. I was your right-hand man. I was always there for you. And what'd you do? You turned your back on me. That was the biggest mistake you made in your life when you put your hands on me and slapped me in the face. You just got to remember, your servant can also be your master, Kevin Sullivan. Just remember, I am the Night Stalker, 6'8", 310 pounds. I am hungry, and I will be fed at your expense.
He's such a nice Southern boy, isn't he? And
is he Southern? Like, is Brian Clark Southern?
I know he's not from 3 Mile Island, whatever that's worth. But I mean, I just kind of assumed that he was, because I mean, he was in WCW when they were doing 99% of their shows in the South, and now he is in Smoky Mountain, and they weren't exactly flying people in. So I'm kind of
Wikipedia. I am not looking for Brian Campbell Clark, the British professor of genetics from the University of Nottingham.
Maybe he's a better wrestler, but well, according to Cage Match, he was born in Harrisburg. Go ahead.
Really? Wikipedia says he was born in Tallahassee, Florida.
Cage Match says he was born in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Huh.
Brian Clark, if you're listening to this, and I have no idea why you wouldn't be, let us know where you actually were born. Tallahassee makes more sense.
I forget that he's still alive. Like I knew Brian Adams was dead, but for some reason in my head I think they're both dead. But no, Brian Clark is actually still with us. No doubt listening to the Something Else podcast.
Of course, because why wouldn't he? He screamed about being hungry. Maybe get him a Twix?
Knickers, you're not you when you're hungry?
Why? I think I only said Twix because I was eating a Twix while watching the show. But yeah, I was thinking of Snickers. So edit that. Maybe get him a Snickers. Ha 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 ha. All right, then we go to Smoky Mountain Champion, Dirty White Boy with Mr. Ron Wright versus Tracy Smothers in a Tennessee chain match. They explain that you have to hit all 4 corners in a row without your opponent hitting an offensive move. So at least they came up with a reason instead of the vague, forward momentum, forward progress shit that usually gets ignored in the finish anyway. So I like that. So we come back from a commercial. I think the match went nearly 30 minutes, but we obviously weren't getting 30 minutes of this here. But we come back from a commercial with DWB meandering around the ring after hitting the first 3 before Tracy cuts him off. Tracy is leaking blood, and DWB hits the dick kick. Les theorizes that White Boy will have to render Tracy unconscious, and White Boy must have been listening because he then hung Tracy over the top rope. But thankfully for Tracy, he's no Tim Horner. He's no Hector Guerrero. He's no whoever else has been hung on this show. I think one of the Fultons got hung one time. He pulled himself back in. So good for him. White Boy goes to the top rope, but gets yanked off. Tracy sets to fire a comeback. And Tracy wraps the chain around White Boy's neck and drags him along. And I note that White Boy kept hitting the corner too, but he kept being punched along the way, which is technically breaking it up. Tracy gets the first 3 buckles, then lifts White Boy up in a fireman's carry. But as he turns the corner, Mr. Right trips them. And then, of course, we get the finish of every chain match in history. White Boy hits every corner, but Tracy's being drug along and hitting one behind him. And then White Boy and Tracy have the tug of war. White Boy essentially pulls Tracy over his own shoulder and into the final turnbuckle. And Tracy gets the win and gets the title. The king is dead. Long live the new king.
So they went 26 minutes. This match was fucking awesome. Just awesome old school wrestling violence. Smothers bleeding all over the place like a true Southern Territory babyface. Fucking Dirty White Boy did his duty as well. God, this match was just fucking great.
So what you're saying is that Tracy Smothers' girlfriend did not tell him he wasn't allowed to bleed.
No, because Tracy Smothers is a man.
Or if she did, he didn't listen to her. So from here, Tracy is wearing the crimson mask, and he goes backstage to be interviewed by Lance Russell. Let's hear from our new champion.
Lousy time. I want you to get back and get a shower. I got to tell you, Tracy, I want you to share with everybody the joy of winning that championship in one of the greatest matches I have ever seen.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. I'm just, it's the greatest moment of my life. I can't believe it. You know, I've been in sport 9 years, and this is the best thing that ever happened. I talked about climbing that mountain, you know, and I talked about changing my path and that I wasn't raised like they saw for the last year and a half. And I talked about going down that road, down the asphalt, when you run off in the mud. You don't have many riders with you. I think I got a lot of riders now. White Boy, I told him, you know, I said he's going to have to kill me to beat me, and he darn near did. But, man, by the good grace of God and the support of the fans, just a little bit of lady luck, I'm the new Smoky Mountain Heavyweight Champion. It's hard to keep my composure here.
And the fact that you wouldn't quit, you would not quit.
God, and that's the toughest match I've ever had in my life. I've never, ever... Huh?
Hey, what are you doing in here?
Get the hell off of me!
You go. What you got
there, like your Smoky Mountain Heavyweight Champion! Get up, punk! There will be more chain matches!
Get this guy out of here.
Come on, get out of here! Get the hell
I just love that, like, it's like so random that not just White Boy would attack him, but White Boy would attack him with a piece of wood.
Yeah.
Like,
it was a great piece of wood, man. He fucking smashed that piece of wood over Tracy's head and it shattered.
Yes. That piece of wood did in fact explode over Tracy's head. And Tracy, being like the ultimate babyface, and we've talked about this before, it's like it's one of the things you really can't get away with in 2024 is being the aw shucks down home babyface. And he thanks the fans and the good grace of God for getting him here. And it's like, it's like outside of the fact that he's covered in blood, it's like bring him home to grandma and let him meet Tracy Smothers. And she just loved him by the end.
Grandmas would love Tracy Smothers.
Yes. And I noted on the rewatch just now when White Boy hit him with the wood and knocked him down, he then kicked Tracy in the dick. And Tracy didn't really sell
it. His balls are brass.
Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can now.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries.
Tracy Smothers, brass balls.
Yes. Maybe they should have a brass balls championship. And Tracy could win that too.
Instead of the brass knuckles championship, the brass balls championship.
Where is Dana White? Instead of having slap fight, he could have slap balls.
Oh God. So we were talking on the other show this week. I was raving about Boltin Oleg, who is like this big jacked up amateur wrestler from Kazakhstan who's in New Japan now. And if I was booking New Japan, I really think that they should establish that Boltin Oleg's balls are made of granite. So like if you hit him in the balls, you sell your hand. Like do that with Dick Togo, do it with Yano. He'd be immune to Yano and House of Torture antics. I think that'd be a fantastic gimmick. Brass balls, Bolton.
Wow. Wow. By the way, we talked on the other show about the G1 just being different. There's no Yano this year, is there?
There's not. He lost to Boltin Oleg in the qualifying tournament, actually.
It's just not right to have a G1 without Toru Yano. And
I'm actually, and I can see a lot of people saying that it's a good thing you're not wasting a spot, but I really enjoy those Yano matches as just like something to break up the card when you've just got, a whole like a 10 match show of like badass banger singles matches. A fucking 3 minute comedy Yano match, it breaks things up a bit.
yes, the only time it didn't work for me anyway was that the first year that they broke it up, where instead of doing the 10 matches per show, they would do a one block of 5 matches with some undercard tags. And it was determined that every G1 match had to be at least 10 minutes. And Yano going 10 minutes was not good because, like, you can only do that gimmick for so long. But
yeah,
that and I don't want to spoil anything to imply that Kenny Omega is a better wrestler than Michael Elgin, but they both had matches with Yano in that one G1, and Elgin could not work with Toru Yano. He refused to lower his guard and let Yano be Yano, and the match really sucked. And then Kenny Omega had a match that was a million times better.
I have absolutely no problem saying that Kenny Omega is a better wrestler than Michael Elgin.
Yes. And let it be known, I hated Michael Elgin before most other people.
Just like completely random because I haven't thought about him in like a couple of years because he hasn't been relevant. Like a couple of months ago, within the last 3 months, it's just a random New Japan show, like a lower level show on New Japan World that Jeff Cobb did guest commentary on the English commentary feed with Walker Stewart. And just casually, and you wouldn't know unless you knew, but just for some reason, Jeff Cobb decided to fucking bury Michael Elgin without saying his name. He was just talking about, for some reason, they were talking about baseball. And I don't remember why exactly, but Jeff Cobb just out of nowhere goes, yeah, could you imagine being like a champion in wrestling and being like, yeah, I'm gonna go try to play baseball now. Yeah, that'd be fucking dumb if you did that.
Thank you, Michael Elgin, for retiring every 6 months or so.
Remember, okay, so that when he was Ring of Honor World Champion and he wanted to go play baseball, that was dumb. I think he also pissed them off because he did a pinfall job for Trevor Lee in PWG while he was Ring of Honor World Champion, and that was a big no-no. You remember a few years ago when he was in Japan and he like got arrested, he got arrested allegedly for stealing protein powder?
I'll be honest, I don't remember any of these things, but it's Michael Elgin, so I believe every bit of it.
He's kind of a douche canoe, isn't he?
Yes, he was. And I just remember him and
it's
Bull Dempsey on NXT at the same time were wearing the Dr. Death Steve Williams robe. And it's like, it looked a lot better on Bull Dempsey.
What sucks is I was only in attendance live for one Ring of Honor World title change, and it was when Michael Elgin beat Adam Cole.
I think I've only been in attendance for one Ring of Honor title change. Actually, I've been in attendance for two. Jay Lethal over Jay Briscoe at Best in the World at Terminal 5,
Yeah.
which I still attest is a fucking great place to see a wrestling show. It was really cool, but no one else has ever gone back there, or at least since. And I was at MSG when Matt Taven won in the ladder match. And 20,000 people. I wasn't the only person cheering, but Matt Taven is originally from New Bedford, where I am, and I watched him wrestle on shows in front of 10 people, at fair shows, and now I watched him as part of a 20,000 seat crowd watching him win the world title. And love him or hate him, I was fucking so proud of him and so happy for him when he did that.
I just remember at the time, everybody was like, "Why the fuck did you put Matt Taven over?" Like everybody in the world thought that Marty Scurll should have won that match, and then like a year later, everybody was retroactively like, "Thank fucking God, Marty Scurll didn't win that match."
I mean, I'll be honest. Like, as much as I was happy Taven won, I was kind of shocked they didn't put the title on Marty Scurll either at the time. And
But if I can retroactively, imaginarily book that card, because that was the ladder match, and it was an homage to Shawn and Razor doing the ladder match in MSG, right?
Yeah.
But what I thought should have happened is, do you remember? I don't think many people even remember this because it didn't actually happen. But in what year did Kenny get the big 2016? Because it was when AJ left New Japan, so they gave Kenny the big push, and he was supposed to defend the Intercontinental title against Hiroshi Tanahashi in a ladder match.
I remember that,
and ended up being Tanahashi was injured. They ended up doing Omega and Michael Elgin, who actually they had a fucking great match. So not to bury Michael Elgin too bad. He's but whatever.
I'll bury Michael Elgin all day long. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, but I thought, and apparently the original plan for that show was to do Omega and Okada again, which would have been great. But I thought that they should have done Tanahashi in the scenario would have won the Tokyo Dome match,
which he did,
and then because other things happened, and it ended up Omega ended up not being on the MSG card anyway. But I thought it should have been Tanahashi and Omega in a ladder match in Madison Square Garden.
That would have been pretty interesting, I'll tell you that. I would have loved to see.
It's a shame.
I know I kind of got to see that.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know I kind of got to see it at Forbidden Door, but I would have liked to have seen that singles Okada Tanahashi match in Madison Square Garden, but they put the title on Jay White a month before.
I am very happy that I did get to see. I was there live for one Okada and Tanahashi singles match.
I'm assuming you went to the Dallas G1 match and you didn't go to Japan for any of their,
Yeah, it was in Dallas.
I wanted to go to that show so bad, but it's like I just couldn't make it happen. But
yeah, so it actually was very convenient to me because I live in Texas. But it's funny at the conference convention that my wife is at right now, it was the same convention. It was in Vegas that year, but the day that I was supposed to leave, it was the day of that show, and I told them hey, look, I'll go, but I got to come a day later because I'm fucking going to this G1 show in Dallas.
Mm-hmm. I remember when
fireworks. That's actually a pretty decent fireworks display that I can see right out of my window that I'm looking out of right now.
Nice. Around this time of year, I always laugh because I think about with the first time New Japan did the American show. I think it was 2016. It aired on Access and it was in Long Beach, California. And the entire staff of the Observer was at the show except for me. And so I was asked to do the play-by-play for the website. And I made a comment that, do you remember when the entire school would go on a field trip, but the one secretary would have to stay back to answer the phones?
Yes.
Yes. That was me. I was the secretary answering the phone that day. And I remember because I would skip the 8-man, 10-man, 6-man tags. So it's like there was a lot of people that I didn't see wrestle a whole lot. And I told them, I'm like, I'm not I watch New Japan, but I'm not familiar with a lot of these guys. But at the end of the day, I was a whole lot better than Jim Ross on commentary, because that was a shitty night for JR. Like, he was messing up everyone's name and not knowing who was who and all that shit. I don't remember if that was the same show that Jay White pushed the table into Jim Ross and JR fell over and Josh Barnett is like, oh, you just done fucked up or whatever. And
yeah, that wasn't that show. That was the next year in the Cow Palace.
Okay. Either way, I always think about that when JR is on an AEW show. I'm like, I can't imagine anyone knocking JR over at this point, but I just imagine Josh Barnett getting ready to stand up wherever he is and fucking somebody up for it.
And they do not do New Japan shows in the US as good as the ones we were getting in 2017, 2018. But to be fair, they don't do New Japan shows in Tokyo as good today as they were in 2017 and 2018.
I'm gonna say they don't have the talent anymore. And I mean, it's nothing against the people there, but it's like there's a major drop off. And
all right.
Hooray for AEW.
All right, listen to this card for the first G1 special in Long Beach in 2017. The main event was Kazuchika Okada versus Cody for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship.
That's the show I'm talking about.
And then we had the 4 first-round matches in the U.S. title tournament. Listen to these fucking matches. Jay Lethal versus Hangman Page. Zack Sabre Jr. versus Juice Robinson. Tomohiro Ishii versus Tetsuya Naito. And oh my god, this just came up again. Kenny Omega versus Michael Elgin.
I remember the Hangman Jay Lethal match people were shitting on Twitter, and I'm like, it wasn't that bad. I mean, you kind of expect better, but it was a perfectly adequate match.
Yeah. I remember the next day, the main event was the tournament final, which was Omega against Ishii in a fucking great match. The semi-main event on that show, Hiroshi Tanahashi versus Badass Billy Gunn.
That was at the beginning when Billy Gunn was just randomly in New Japan. What the fuck is going on?
Which, funny enough, set up Hiroshi Tanahashi teaming with the Acclaimed at Forbidden Door this year.
Yeah. It's Billy Gunn randomly being in New Japan was one of those why moments. And then it's
teaming with Yoshi Tatsu as the Bullet Club Hunters.
Yeah. Oh my God. Remember that Tokyo Dome show that Yoshi Tatsu did commentary for?
Yes. Oh my God. It was so bad.
And it's because that was after AJ injured him with the Styles Clash when he tucked his head when he shouldn't have. And it's he was so fucking pissed at AJ. I think it was AJ versus Nakamura. It was the Tokyo Dome show when it came out that AJ, Nakamura, and the Good Brothers were going to WWE. And Yoshitatsu's on commentary asking why would they be wrestling for the Intercontinental title? Why are they lowering themselves to this title? And it's it was both the greatest commentary and the worst commentary ever. And your commentary is bad when Matt Stryker is the better of your commentating team.
Jesus, who was that? Was it Kevin Kelly, Matt Stryker, and Yoshitatsu, or who was it?
It definitely wasn't JR. I think it was Kevin Kelly. Because JR...
Kevin Kelly has been a controversial figure recently, and I understand why, and I get that he maybe wasn't at his best in AEW, but I gotta say, I was a huge fan of Kevin Kelly in New Japan. He got really like as he because he was there for like 7 or 8 years, and he got really into it and was really like a part of it. And I thought he did really well.
Oh yeah, he was fantastic. And I mean, I don't know if his career is necessarily over, but I mean, well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. By the way, over in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, the show that we're allegedly talking about, how did we even get to this? I'd like to imagine this was my fault because we're talking about the chain match, and suddenly we were talking about Boltin Oleg's balls.
Yeah, that was how we transitioned into New Japan. It was Boltin Oleg's balls. That also needs to be in the description this week, by the way.
Oh, it is.
In fact,
You know,
you should name the show, if you don't have a name, Brass Balls Boltin.
1 second here. Brass balls. It's Boltin.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the Smoky Mountain Showdown, the match that we've been building up since November, and we just spent 20 minutes talking about, among other things, Boltin Oleg's balls. So this match is like really when it hit me that I need to go watch the Bluegrass Brawl, because this match got butchered in editing. Like we're joining progress, and it's like all 9 guys are just going after each other in the ring. At one point, Robert Gibson and Bob Eaton are brawling to the back and begin climbing up a basketball hoop. But then we jump from that to everything else. So I just assumed nothing happened. It wasn't until I read The Observer that it was like, oh, they actually came off the basketball hoop. And because they talked about Gibson being injured or being hurt anyway. At one point.
No, you don't need to watch anything else, but you do need to watch, and everybody should watch, the Tracy Smothers Dirty White Boy match, the whole match, and the street fight, because this was like the Dirty White Boy Tracy Smothers match was like a grueling, violent fight. This was just a fucking wild plunder match.
So Cornette went into the ring and Dutch choked him out with Shoe Baby before Stan Lane broke it off. Corny ran off. Rock and Roll fight Fuller over a chair, but Rock and Roll got the best of it, and they hit Fuller with the chair, and Gibson pinned him to eliminate the Stud Stable first. They didn't leave right away. Instead, Fuller, Dutch, and Golden continued to beat down the remaining participants. At one point, a gallon of powder exploded into the air as Arn then hit all the heels with DDTs, but no one made the cover. Morton pulls a table into the ring, sets it up in the corner, and each heavenly body, including Cornette, got thrown into it. The finish saw Gibson put Cornette in the figure 4, and while the announcers were wondering if it would count if Cornette submitted, Tom loaded his knee pad and came off the top rope with a knee drop for the pin. So that's the table. The Heavenly Bodies win the Smoky Mountain Showdown.
Cornette says that was a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's also said that he would have reversed the last 2 matches, so the crowd got sent home happy.
Yeah.
I mean,
it really, like, it could have gone either way, but I don't know. The street fight only went 13 and a half minutes. Smothers and White Boy went 26. So
yeah.
Really, it could either would have worked. Like, and they're both great matches, but yeah, maybe it should have been a babyface win. I don't know. It was. I didn't think that the finish was bad or wrong or anything.
I think it was.
I just.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was a heel win, and maybe it was mistimed, but.
I think it's because they've brought up a lot of times in the build up to this match that the Heavenly Bodies have are undefeated in Smoky Mountain street fights, and so they wanted to build it up to make it to build to a future match where they would finally lose a street fight. But I think in this case it would have been better to have Rock and Roll and Double A win.
Did you mention Arn and the fire extinguisher?
I said powder, but I guess it was a fire extinguisher.
It was a fire extinguisher. It's funny because for whatever reason, I was talking to my wife. Like, we just bought new fire extinguishers, and so we were talking about it, and I just mentioned like, oh yeah, they use fire extinguishers in wrestling sometimes. It's like a big spot because it looks cool. And then she just happened to be in the room when Arn sprayed everybody with a fire extinguisher. I'm like, see, it's fire extinguisher.
I thought you were going to say that you sprayed her with the fire extinguisher.
No, I did not do that.
Okay. Well, let's go to some promos here with the losers versus Stud Stable, or more, like we say every time the Stud Stable do a promo. Let's go to a Robert Fuller promo with Jimmy Golden and Dutch Mantel in the background. And that's going to segue into a Rock and Roll Express promo.
You might have figured we'd go in there and we'd have them all against us. We got heavenly bodies. I turn around. I got one of the good-for-nothing rock and roll down. Here comes the other one from behind. I turn around on him. Here comes the other one from behind. Heavenly bodies all over us. Rock and roll all over us. You figured you're going to get the stable out of it. You're going to prove maybe you're better than the homeboys. Let me promise you something, boys. We're going to see you again. We want the same match. You see we get it. We want all of them in the ring. One more time, Dutch. Jimmy, I'm going to promise you, you think you had a hard time with a stable. You're going to get a hard time. Your belts ain't safe. Your life ain't safe. Ain't nobody beat the stable. Get out of here. We had a while to sit back and think about what happened at the Bluegrass Brawl right there in Pikeville, Kentucky. But you see, Jimmy Cornette, we have another one of these matches coming up. Anything goes. And we're going to prove to the whole world, Jimmy Cornette, we're going to pull your britches down and show them that you wear pantyhose. But another thing is, if we want somebody to take care of you, Jimmy Cornette, I go out and get Robert's sister. Because we got one thing in our mind. This time we come to the ring, we know and we're prepared for it. You see, when that match was over in Pikeville, Robert, I looked around. There was tires, there was bricks, there was chains, there was 2x4s. Well, you see, this time, bring them on back down there. Because this time we're going to take them away from you and stick them where the sun don't shine. You see, 3 teams in the ring. Anything goes. Wear what you want to. Bring anything you want to. Well, that's fine and dandy with us. Because we're on the road back to the top, Jimmy Cornette, and we don't care what it takes. Rock and roll is here to stay. We're not here to play. So bring it on, baby. Are you ready for a fight? We are, brother. We've been there before, and we know what it's like, baby. Nobody has ever handed us nothing on a silver platter. Everything we got, it took blood, sweat, and tears. And, baby, I'm telling you, Jimmy Cornette, you and your heavenly bodies at the Stud Stable with Dutch Mantel or without them is not going to stop us.
That promo went way too long. Like, maybe I'm crazy, maybe it's just me, but it's like that went a good 30 to 45 seconds longer than it needed to go. And maybe it's like he was wrapping up and he just kept going. And it's possible they were giving him the signal to stretch it out a bit. But yeah, it would have been better off. I hate to use the Tim Horner rule, but it would have been better off if he had the Tim Horner rule of going a lot less than he did.
Yeah, it didn't seem like he had very much to say. He was really reaching for stuff to say.
And he does plan to pull down Jim Cornette's britches and show everyone that he wears pantyhose.
He said that. He said that twice. He said that in this promo, and then again in like one of the local promos.
Yeah.
So he found that line and really liked it.
And maybe we're gonna build to a spot where Jim Cornette is wearing pantyhose. Who knows? But by the way, Robert Fuller ordered Brian Matthews to make the rematch. So yeah. So I know that they do kind of rematches around the loop, but it's not quite a rematch because Arn Anderson's never gonna wrestle again at Smoky Mountain Wrestling.
Yeah, no, they only did the 3-on-3-on-3 the one time here in Pikeville. They did some more Stud Stable against Heavenly Bodies. They did. Oh, I can't remember. They did the Rock and Roll. Like, I can't remember if they did another 6-man with the Rock and Roll and another partner, but they definitely. This is the only time that they did this.
Are you sure? That seems kind of weird since they've basically said, or 2 of the 3 teams now have said, we want a rematch of this exact match. But well,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I looked.
So
I called myself looking.
So I am looking. They do 3-way matches in Knoxville and Johnson City, but it's 3-way 2-man team matches with the Rock and Roll Express, Slade and Pritchard, and Fuller and Golden. Just gonna glance around to make sure that's what it is. Yeah, they do a 4-way with Rock and Roll Express, White Boy and Jimmy Golden, Brian Lee and Tim Horner, and Lane and Pritchard in Chilhowie, Virginia. But yeah, that's about it. So yeah, they don't do 3 teams of 3 men. So technically, no, this is a one and done thing. And also, I think after this run of TV is done, I think we're done with Bobby Eaton too. Actually, no.
I think we've got him for at least one more TV.
Yeah, he's on the April 19th taping in Barberville, so scratch that. So after that, though, he's done.
Sad.
Yes. And by the way, one of the things that happened this week, but I don't mention, is that on one of the WCWB shows, Arn Anderson cuts a promo on Bob Eaton saying Bob Eaton's been wrestling in the minor leagues the last few months, even though Arn Anderson is wrestling in the same company at the same time.
Yeah, that's rich.
Yes. And of course, he was told to say this isn't something Arn Anderson was going to say on his own. But by the way, I should have noted this earlier because it's going to make more sense here in a second. During Dutch's intro, he holds up signs that say Dutch Mantel genius, ? Or just misunderstood. Well, Cornette has found that sign, and Cornette is out to cut a promo here, leading to what should be a fantastic main event.
All right, fans, with me right now, of course, here he is, Mr. Jim Cornette. Last week, you were about to explode when we had our Beat the Champ match, Tom Pritchard against Beautiful Bobby.
You see, it's this kind of stuff that makes America these days a crummy country. False advertising everywhere, and all these rednecks are dumb enough to believe it. Now, let me tell you something. I realize that Bob Armstrong, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, you, Bob Caudle, everybody's against the Heavenly Bodies are jealous of success. Hey, that's okay, because I can deal with adversity. I talked to Tom Pritchard right now. I talked to Beautiful Bobby Eaton. I've got everything under control. They tell me it's going to be a clean, scientific match. Nobody's going to break the rules. No tempers are going to flare, and we're going to put this thing past us and get it behind us. There are no personality conflicts in the Heavenly Bodies, and this match will prove it, and I will remain impartial.
All right, fans.
Thanks for stirring things up.
There from the mouth of none other than Jim Cornette. Let's go to the ring.
Okay, so we're getting ready for our Beat the Champ TV title match, and we've had this built up between Beautiful Bobby and Dr. Tom Pritchard now for pretty much since the moment Bob Eaton showed up. And Jim promises a good, clean, scientific match in our TV title match. And so I'm psyched. I'm fucking ready. Beat the Champ TV champion Bobby Eaton with Jim Cornette versus Dr. Tom Pritchard with Jim Cornette. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be good, right? This is going to be fucking good.
Right. Yeah.
We can't have nice things. There.
I was at least amused by both in what they were doing in fact and in what they were doing in character. So it's like double levels of ironic in that it was 2 heels performing having a babyface match.
Yeah. So Cornette gets in the ring at the bell and gives instructions to both men. And then because like nothing about this match can go right. Tim Horner comes out to join commentary.
Oh,
Be-
God.
Like legitimately, like nothing about this match could go right, apparently. Because like, yeah, it's one thing to explain to Rick Rubin that, yeah, we have to give Tim Horner some promo time because, you know, he's a babyface, you know, etc. It's another thing to explain why we gave him 5 minutes of commentary time. And now, the good thing about Horner on commentary is someone finally explained to him that he only won 2 Beat the Champ matches. And if he had won against Bobby Eaton, that would have been 3. And he still needed 2 more weeks after that to win the $5,000. Because before, I was convinced he thought 2 + 1 = 5. As the WrestleMania pyro is going off behind me. You hear it or not. So Cornette forces them to shake each other's hand, which both men were trying to hurt each other's hand while doing it. Horner tells a bad joke, and Dutch does the exaggerated fake laugh, which doesn't even save the moment. We do have a clean match up until we ended up with them in the corner, and then their heel tendencies took over. We had some hair pulling, we had some cheap shots, and then we go to a commercial break as Eaton and Tom are needing Cornette to pull them apart because they have tackled each other to the mat. They're punching each other wildly. And okay, we go to commercial break. We fast forward about 90 seconds because it's the babyface local promos. And the match is over.
Yeah.
I didn't look up to see what exactly happened because maybe they'll play it next week. They don't imply that they're going to play it next week, but I hope they are. But because in the Observer this week, Dave basically says that like they edited this show so poorly that they didn't even air the finish of this TV title match. So
Yeah, no, there wasn't a finish.
I don't know. But anyway, with the rules of the Beat the Champ title, even though we didn't see a finish, we're theoretically left to believe that Bobby Eaton is still the winner because the challenger has to pin or submit the champion. So even if it's a count out, a DQ, a no contest, whatever, it's as good as a win for the champion. So Bobby
it is the Beat the Champ title, and the challenger did not beat the champ.
Yeah, so Bobby Eaton gets another $1,000. Now technically won 2 weeks in a row, and by the way, we're going to play a show closing promo, and the one thing you're going to note, they do not draw a name for next week. So I guess that injunction Cornette had on the courts didn't hold up for 1 week. But
we already forgot.
Even though it was the same TV taping. So let's go, and this isn't just going to be the Cornette promo with the Heavenly Bodies. We're also going to get, finally, the ruling from Bullet Bob Armstrong on the future of the Heavenly Bodies being a 3-man team being tag team champion.
Not a thing you said occurred in that ring. Everything went exactly opposite from what you said it was going to go.
Well, let me tell you something, Bob Caudle. If it did that, that's just because of Bob Armstrong's tampering and you're tampering and the rest of these people around Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Now, I told you guys, quit it. Quit it. He don't owe you no money.
You owe me $1,000. You owe me $1,000.
He don't owe
$1,000. I beat you out there, Bobby. I beat you out there.
I'll give you $1,000.
I don't want yours. I want Bobby's $1,000.
He don't have $1,000. Wait a minute. Would you please? Hey, quit. That's it. Now you got a piece of videotape of what Bob Armstrong's been saying. I want to see it. I want to know exactly what's going on.
All right, fans, let's watch that right here from Commissioner Bob Armstrong.
You know, from the start, everybody's wondered what Jimmy Cornette's trying to pull, forming a corporation, a 3-man corporation. Everybody knows 2 and 3 don't make 4. Our attorneys are now ready to stand up in court that say 3 men cannot defend 2 belts. So what we've decided is this, that Jimmy Cornette, all you wanted to do was get yourself a tax dodge to save some of you and your mother's money. Well, it ain't going to work. We're ready to go to court now if you are. You know no judge in this right mind would say 3 men can defend 2 belts. So from now on, what we've decided is the 2 original signees, and I'm talking about Tom Pritchard and Stan Lane, they will be the ones to defend the tag team titles, and only they. And I'll tell you what, I've done some more digging. I heard some rumors this morning about 6:30. I was awakened with a phone call, and a rumor that if it turns out to be fact will shock the wrestling world. I got 6 days to dig, and Bobby Eaton, you'll be very interested in what I may come up with. I'll be back with you next week, Bob.
How can he say something like that? How can he be saying something like that?
Commissioner Bob Armstrong.
I know who he Commissioner Bob Armstrong. That's like Fathead McGee.
Hey, 1, 2, 3. Only can be
Hey,
2.
I can't believe for 1 second that Bob Armstrong would rule that Bobby Eaton is not eligible to defend the Smoky Mountain Tag Team title. And I'm sick and tired of this constant interference, this constant tampering. Bob Armstrong, you've done everything you can think of to try to screw us up. You've done everything you can think of to try to stop the heavenly bodies of Jim Cornette. You go to court, you get lawyers, you file injunctions, you file papers, you say that we can't defend the titles, all three of us. You try to stick Bobby Eaton in some kind of crazy mixed-up match with his own partner for the TV title. You get this guy to draw ringers out of a hat. Let me tell you something, Bob Armstrong, you're treading on thin ice with me, brother. And when I want to do something to somebody, I generally get it done. And as far as the Rock and Roll Express goes, like I've said before, we beat them in street fights, we beat them in every kind of match, and we still can't get them out of here. So we're going to embarrass them. We're going to laugh them out. We're going to make it so humiliating for the Rock and Roll Express, they'll never want to show their face here again. And then I'm going to court. I'm getting my mama's attorneys to get Bobby Eaton reinstated as a member of the Tag Team Champions as well as to beat the champs. Tom, I've got to do that. What?
Does this mean that Bob and I are done? We're through?
No. It's just Bob Armstrong saying that he can't be a part of a tag team title defense. It's got to be you guys because your names are on the contract. From now on until I get it reversed. And you need to get out of here. You need to get out of here. We're getting out of here. There are no personality problems in the heavenly body.
I can see that. I can certainly understand that. Fans, we'll see you next week. Until.
All right. So a quality show-winning promo here. More of what we've seen, with Eaton and Tom. And Tom says he wants $1,000. Cornette's like, I'll give you $1,000. He's like, I don't want your $1,000. I want Eaton's $1,000. And it was just great. And then they go to the Bullet Bob promo where they have announced that only 2 men can be the tag team champion. And it's going to be the original 2, Lane and Pritchard. And the way they said it was kind of awkward. What they should have said, and this would have been easier, was the team that won the titles in the first place. Because it was Lane and Pritchard that beat the Rock and Roll Express for the tag team titles. But yeah. I think that would have been easier than to say, the team that was contracted to us from the beginning. But, Stan and Tom are the only men who are allowed to defend the tag team titles. And also, someone woke him up at 6:30 that morning to tell him about a rumor. And he's going to look into this rumor for 1 whole week. And if it turns out this rumor is true, this is something big about Bobby
Eaton. Interesting.
Yes. And honestly, I don't know what the rumor is, so we'll have to wait and see next week.
Me neither.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
I did laugh that when they come back from the video, Tom yanks Stan, because Stan was standing next to Bobby. So Tom reaches over and yanks Stan over to his side of the camera. And
Stan is so over the shit. Like, he's just standing there watching all these goose yell about shit, just waiting for this shit to end. He's ready to go home. He's done.
Yep. And they are planting the seeds for both the next big angle and the next big match, because they're not just talking about running the Rock and Roll Express out of town for the hell of it. They're building to something here. And, all these jabs that Cornette's doing to Bullet Bob, it's leading somewhere.
Yeah.
And
it's leading to what all of Smoky Mountain Wrestling so far has been leading to.
Yes. But, so that does it for this week's episode of Smoky Mountain. 63 down, 137 to go. This was a fun episode. It could have been a lot better. Like, I don't know what's on next week's show, but it feels like they could have easily put at least one of these Bluegrass Brawl matches on next week. Like they could have done the Sullivan match and the chain match this week, or no, because the chain match went 30 minutes. So the Sullivan match and the three-way match this week, and put the chain match on next week, or vice versa even. Like they didn't have to do all three matches on this show to the point that it bastardized at least 2 out of 3, and then killed the main event.
I think next week is back to business as usual.
Oh well. And I mean, by the way, Bluegrass Brawl, like this was the highest attended show up to this point. It was about 2,000 people, and it was the first show that ever grossed more than $10,000. So, which I know, obviously, it doesn't sound like much. Oh, $10,000. WrestleMania did 18 million. Like, okay, not every fucking show is WrestleMania.
So it's $10,000 in 1993 in East Tennessee, or Eastern Kentucky, actually.
Which is about 28,000, 25,000, using the inflation calculator for 2024. And even if Trey runs to the inflation calculator right now and tells me, oh, it's only 19,000, that's still a nice chunk of change. It paid a few bills.
Word for it.
It seemed like something you would go do on me and tell me, oh, it wasn't 25, it's 19 or something.
I actually just assumed you looked it up.
Yeah, I know from listening to Cornette talk about money, it's about 2.5 times. But that could have been like 80s money versus now. But either way, it's still it's even if say it's 19,000, still $19,000 is still a pretty sizable house, and more money than your independents are making nowadays, charging more per tickets.
This was a successful show.
They paid some bills this week, definitely. And before we finish things up, we got to talk about what else is happening this week in wrestling. And to be honest, there was a lot of slim pickings on this week's Observer, because like the primary story is that a major news source did a huge article on the Von Erich tragedy. I don't really feel like we need to go over that. But the next big news story is that WrestleMania 9 is expected to have done 430,000 buys on pay-per-view, which turns out to be the lowest buy rate of any WrestleMania. However, it is still higher than expected thanks to Hulk Hogan, because as much as you could say, well, they were sick of Hogan by 93, he was still responsible for quite a bit of revenue to this show. And it was estimated that Hogan by himself probably added $1.2 million to the overall bottom line of this show. So
was that really the lowest WrestleMania buy rate?
Up to this point, yeah. I mean, it wasn't the lowest number of buys, but I mean,
okay, lowest to this point.
Yeah.
So you're like, no way that did less than like 96 and 97.
Oh no, not 97 still the all-time lowest. I mean, until the network came along. But even then, like 30 and 31 still drew more pay-per-view buys, with it still being on the WWE network, than WrestleMania 13 did.
97 to 237,000.
Yeah, it got beat by 5 WCW pay-per-views that year, and Survivor Series with Brett and Shawn.
Yeah. I think the uncensored that month beat it.
Yep. News was so slow this week, I was forced to look to the Japan notes, because as much as I love Japan, it's like I tend to ignore those when looking for stuff to talk about. But the All Japan Champion Carnival is in full swing right now, but it appears to be the only wrestlers still left in contention at this point are Dr. Death Steve Williams, Akira Taue, Mitsuru Misawa, Stan Hansen, Toshiaki Kawada, Terry Gordy, and Kenta Kobashi. I figured this was
93.
Yes.
I think Kawada won. Because Kawada actually won. That was one thing. He won the Champion Carnival before Misawa did. Okay, no, 93 Stan Hansen. Kawada won in 94.
I was going to say, this one I was going to have to take your word for it. Let's see. Yeah, this was the one thing where I said there was one thing I was confident that you would be excited about. That was it.
Yeah.
But the final big story I have is Tully Blanchard has agreed to return to WCW to reform his tag team with Arn Anderson as a babyface and as part of the new Four Horsemen. Spoiler alert, it does not happen.
Is that why we get Paul Roma instead?
Yes. It basically
What
came down
happened
to,
with Tully?
I believe it comes down to money. Tully wanted more than they were offering. And-
That's it's a real shame that Tully Blanchard's Major League Wrestling career ended so poorly.
Mhm. But by the way, the finals of that Champion Carnival was Stan Hansen versus Misawa because they tied with 20 points each, and Hansen beat Misawa after beating him in the round robin play. And
Yeah, I think Misawa won their Triple Crown match that came off of that, though.
now I could just be, assuming things about Jun Akiyama being more important than he was at the time, but I was first shocked that he had 0 points. Then I looked, he must have been injured at some point because he forfeited every match.
I don't know. That was just like he was a rookie, but he was like Akiyama was like a super rookie, but yeah, I don't know, maybe he was injured.
Here we go. Jun Akiyama suffered an arm injury in a tag team match on the first event of the tournament, partnering with Amori versus Satoru Asako. You're going to have to probably fix that for me. And Masao. Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm not even pronouncing that one either. But anyway, Akiyama was unable to participate in the tournament.
Masao, in a way?
Yes. Him. And I'm actually kind of surprised that he got injured before the tournament started and they didn't just replace him. I figured that'd be easier than trying to rebook whatever he was originally going to do. I mean, maybe he was going to go 0 and however he manages, it would have been 11.
I mean, you would have had to rebook it anyway, unless you just gave somebody exactly what you were gonna. It's also entirely possible. It's also entirely possible that he would have lost every match anyway because he was a rookie.
British Bulldog was in this. He beat the people you'd expect him to beat, but lost to everybody else. It's like he beat Patriot, Phil LaFawn, and Doug Furnace, and Johnny Ace, and then lost everybody else. So I was kind of like, "Ooh, that could have been interesting." And I mean, sure, it was interesting. It's like I was like, I wonder what upsets he did, but none, 0, silch. By the way, Kenta Kobashi, who's still in contention, apparently at this point, finished 7th. Behind Hansen, Misawa, Gordy, Williams, Kawada, and Taue in that order.
Kobashi only managed one Champion Carnival win. It was the very last one before the split.
I always laugh because, as a kid, my knowledge of Japanese wrestling was reading the aftermags because they started doing a Mexico page and a Japan page. And so
yes,
between that and the PWI 500, that's the only time I found out about Japanese wrestling. And I could not pronounce anybody's name to save my life outside of someone like Kenta Kobashi, who would have had a stroke to not be able to pronounce his name. But, Taiokia's, and I probably butchered it again, but his original name, couldn't pronounce that to save my life. Misawa, no idea. Even Jumbo Tsuruta, the TS just threw me off.
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of Americans just have no frame of reference for Japanese names. And here's the thing. When Japanese names are rendered into Romaji, into our alphabet, they are entirely phonetic, but native English speakers have a really hard time with phonetics when it's too many vowels in a row.
Indeed, we do. Honestly, I still argue with people about the proper pronunciation of Naito and Ishii. So there's that.
Yeah, it's Naito and Ishii. Ishii is kind of hard to say though. I'm probably guilty of just saying Ishii at times.
I think Naito because like I don't know, just like I feel like you're supposed to say Naito and put in that extra syllable in the middle there.
And I did for years, but it's I don't know, I finally got in the habit of calling him Naito. It's another thing again, too many vowels in a row. It's diphthongs. That's what a diphthong is. You remember that word from like junior high just because it's a funny word, diphthong?
That I honestly don't remember.
It's actually what that is, the sound that you make when you put vowels together.
Interesting. I must have zoned out during that English class. Shout out to my 8th grade English teacher, whose name I forget.
Shout out to my 8th grade English teacher, Miss Simmons, who, I don't know, she might be dead now.
Actually, I do remember my 8th grade English teacher, and it's a kind of a funny story, actually. So, as I've mentioned on this show before, my brother and I, we essentially grew up in foster care. And at one point, the geniuses in children and youth decided to separate us and put us in 2 entirely different areas, 2 entirely different school districts. And so we did not see each other very much. However, so my 8th grade English teacher, her name was Miss Oster. So go West Hazelton Elementary Middle School. Yay, us. But so she was a substitute because I forget who our original teacher was supposed to be, but she ended up being a long-term sub that just did the class the entire year. The next year I go to 9th grade, and then the year after, actually it would have been 2 years later, so 11th grade now. I'm in 11th grade, and the geniuses at Children and Youth decided to finally put my brother and I back together in time for him to go into 9th grade. So we're going to high school at the same time. And one of the first days, we're walking down the hallways, and I see Miss Oster there. And she's giving us a funny look. And I'm kind of like, oh my God, Miss Oster, how have you been? Yada, yada, yada. And the reason why she's giving us a funny look was because that year or two after she taught me in 8th grade, she went 20-some plus miles away to my brother's school and taught him. And of course, I had no idea the 2 of us were related until that moment when we all ran into each other in the hallway.
It's funny. I'd say interesting bit of area lore that I didn't know.
Yes. Yeah. I have not the most traditional childhood ever, but it made me who I am. So, you know.
Yeah. It feels weird because like so many people that I know and I'm attached to had like real issues with their parents, and I had like relatively like maybe my parents weren't like superstar parents or anything, but I feel like just compared to all the people who had shitty parents and shitty childhoods, I had it relatively easy.
And I don't mean to put the blame on anything because I mean, ultimately everyone's an adult and make their own decisions. But I do believe our childhood is the reason my brother stuck out his first marriage as long as he did, because they basically stayed together because they had 2 kids. And honestly, and I love my niece and nephew, and the world would be completely different if those 2 would have broken up before they had kids. But they should never have lasted long enough to have kids because it was a very contentious relationship from pretty much day one. And it was like 3 years in when she got pregnant with our nephew. And I mean, again, I love my niece, I love my nephew, and the world would be so different if they hadn't been born, but it's like they really shouldn't have. It's like my brother and her should not have stayed together long enough for that to happen. But and then they tried. They tried to stick it out as long as they could, and ultimately everyone realized they were better off separating. And I think everyone is happier for it.
That's a great way to end the show.
I know, right? I mean, I tell you stories about my crappy relationships, but I mean, I think I've already gone over those enough. But
And talk about my first marriage.
sure, why not? If you want to share it.
Nah, it was it was like the way you just described your brother's marriage, where it was a very toxic relationship, except that I got lucky and got away from her before she got pregnant.
Good. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. Before we get anybody in more trouble than they may already be in, want to give a shout out to my 8th grade English teacher, who I'm sure is listening because I can't imagine why she wouldn't be. And Trey, before we go, do you have anything to say to the fine people who are listening?
Wash your ass.
There we go. Thank you all for listening. Wash your ass, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.